So with billions and billions of dollars kind of sloshing its way from federal and maybe even state governments into build out of broadband, there's going to be some interesting opportunities for partnerships between public entities, private entities. And Dave Fridley, you've been advocating for this kind of partnership for a long time. And this week, you just provided a presentation at MTA. I want to talk to you about that, about your presentation. But first, you, again, have been talking to the public entities. You've, of course, been working with private ISPs for decades. When you're talking about these kind of partnerships, how do you get them started? How, do you bring these two entities that are so different together in a kind of a common platform, if you will?
It's kind of like the old deal about trying to get somewhere and you put your hands in the water and push. Does anything happen? But that's kind of the way I've felt for years. But now in recent years, I'd say in the last 5 years, it's kind of turned around. There's been some people out there that have been very open to it. Others are just, we're busy. We got all the excuses in the world and good reasons that why they don't want to do it. So, but now it seems like we've kind of gotten over that. More and more of them. And again, it comes back to the federal money that's come out there and has really been a big push, because now counties and municipalities have access to some funds. And if they want to put it towards broadband, now they can ask the question and really be serious about it. How can we make this work in the best interest of our municipality or even our county? And that's where the ISPs or the ILECs come into play. Now maybe we better have a conversation with the general manager that serves the rural outside, or might even have an office in our town. And so I would really say in the last year or two, it's changed. We got momentum, and everybody's starting to think, yeah, we maybe better look at this. So that's really the way I'm seeing it now, because for a long time it was they'd listen to me, but it's like, maybe later. And they had reasons for it. They were busy with their own jobs, and projects. And
now, when you're saying they, are you talking about the ISPs?
Mainly the ILECs, but also the municipals. We want to even get involved with that. Maybe our provider, even though we're unhappy with them, maybe they'll, put some money into us, rather than Des Moines or Minneapolis or wherever, Denver, and again, during the presentation, I said, I'm not here to bash the CFOs of large companies, but they're managing a certain amount of money, and where are they going to put their money? Are they going to put it in Sioux Falls or Minneapolis or or Des Moines, or are they going to put it in a town or city of 5,000 population, 2,000 homes passed? Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you're sitting in that shoes, that CFO, I'm not blaming them for where they have to distribute their money. So, and my point is, well, if they're not going to serve them, here's your opportunity. Because I don't think they're all that upset that you come in there and take this little community off their hands that's been complaining every month, and they get a lot of complaints from them about the poor service. So, and they can only do so much with electronics, and eventually fiber's the king. And a lot of those big entities have coax, for example, and it's pretty good. And there's been a lot of, the DOCSIS capabilities have made it last a long time. But again, it's had a long life, but I think it's pretty much now, even they're going all fiber. So again, it's really a case of I think they're finally starting to say, hey, in this case, we've got some money. Now, if I've got $1 million, can I help on a $15 million build? Well, yeah, you still can. And maybe you can do something with the ISP.
And you've had some success helping municipalities, Pella being an example, Pella, Iowa, which I guess is where it has some unique attributes to the Dutch community as well as the Windows, I guess, right? But
yeah, we did the business plan for them. We're not doing the engineering, but we did the business plan for them, and they're a nice sized community. They were very engaged as to how to go about it. They have the electric utility. I mean, they have a lot of the pieces in place, and it was just a matter of getting them over the hump of getting that feasibility study and a business plan that they could work with, and go to lenders or do revenue bonds, however they're going to get their money, and then work within the community. And they're doing it themselves. They're one of the ones that are doing it all themselves, and they're really building fast. So as last I heard, they're rolling right along. So I think they'll be a successful project. They've got the right kind of leadership and the right kind of people that are they're going to stay with it and push it. It's one thing for me, I'm the builder, so we get it built and then we have to walk away, as much as I hate to, but then you're kind of pins and needles for a few years to say, okay, all the planning we did, is it going to work? Are they going to follow through? Do they have the right people in place? And, I feel pretty confident that the group at Pella will do a good job.
Yeah, that's a challenge, isn't it? Because when you go to that full public ownership perspective, they have different pressures than a private would. And so from an operational standpoint, long term, do they continue to invest as much as is needed to keep up?
Well, and that is always a challenge for them too. And that's why when we do a business plan, and I know others do too, but when we do a business plan, we stress a lot, not just on the initial build, but we build into the dollars for what it's going to take when, at that 5 to 7 year part where you start upgrading your electronics. And that's, sometimes that's left out. Sometimes they don't allow for enough staff, and again, it's a gradual thing as you build in and get more customers. And that's always something they have to negotiate through and just be very aware. And again, I've been involved with some of the smaller communities where we've been heavily involved, even in the early management of it. So I kind of got the reputation to be the guy saying no. No, it's a good idea, but we have to defer it. We can't do it now. Sign up customers, get customers on board, and we'll deal with some of this other stuff later. So it's all about cash flow.
Well, I would imagine. I would imagine too, it depends on the community. Like if they already have electric utility with an office and crew and so forth, that's one thing versus a community that doesn't have that capability, for instance.
Well, true. And it's also many have went into it thinking, well, we're going to cross train our personnel. And I've advocated that too. And I've come to the conclusion that that's not as easy as it sounds, because you don't have a union.
Right.
Number one, they're trained for this, we're doing that. You have different wages a lot of times for the electric workers versus where they're doing communications. And the cross training, and it hasn't worked as well as that I thought it would in theory in my own case. So in the end, we usually end up, if we do aerial plant, that's when like an electric, because they've got the aerial equipment. So that's a big savings. But if we do the buried, they're not familiar with it. But I have seen a couple where we've had, the electric manager said, I actually have 2 people that I think would like to do this, and we're okay for staff, and they're very interested in it. And so, okay, we'll cross train those guys, and they'll pretty much concentrate on the communication side. And we've had some success there, but for the most part, you've got to bring your own people in. But, a lot of times we'll still share management personnel. We might, the GM in a couple of cases, they're running both. They're doing the electric and the broadband side of it. But again, then you try to get an operations manager that can come in under them and do some of the day-to-day. So it's a mix. The biggest thing that electric brings to it is the stability and the capability of borrowing money easier, because they're a known entity. Even though you're setting up a new entity, the lenders are a lot more comfortable knowing, okay, in the background somewhere is the electric utility, and even the electric utility can provide funds. Depends on the state, so you got to be careful with that. But that's where the state laws come into play and what they'll allow them to do. But that's nice to have that, major entity that's already in place when you're bringing a new one in.
And I'd imagine from a customer support standpoint, you might be able to share some resources. Have you found that or not?
Yeah, yes, definitely on the back office support. We've even ones that didn't have an electric utility and were doing just their own. We can get into the city clerk's office, and they can handle the billing, and at least take a phone call, and route it to wherever. So not really a full customer service role, but you may only hire one, what I'll call true CSR, as opposed to hiring 2 or 3, because you can let the calls flow over and have some cross training and staff. And that's been, I think, fairly successful. The wonderful thing for us in the upper Midwest is people want to work, and if that gives them another reason and another more comfort level that they're needed on their job because they're busy, and that doesn't hurt us any. I'm going to just say we got a pretty good work ethic.
Yeah.
and ones that everywhere, in small town America, there's a great work ethic. They're there and they're willing to try stuff. And I've never had an issue there. Once in a while, you get a little kickback, but for the most part, what do you want me to do? And we'll try. And that helps make for a successful company.
Well, I can imagine too, the other difference between now and say 10, 15, 20 years ago is that the fact that the network in many ways is much simpler, right? You don't have all this stuff in between. You have, endpoints and the fiber in between, right? So it's not like you have a bunch of active stuff in between and so forth.
Some days I would argue that that's still that way, but yeah, there's a lot of, I used to say I didn't want any of my staff have a cloud in their presentation, because that was always magic. But realistically, there is this cloud out there where we can get to various places and don't have to have all the equipment on site, and that's a benefit that fiber has brought to the world, and I'll call it gigabit communities and capabilities, so that we don't have to have everything housed in the local office.
So moving kind of to the other end of the spectrum, where you have a community that just is not served well with broadband. It doesn't necessarily have a good, electrical department or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure to create its own ISP. Where's the opportunity there with partnership, or that you're seeing?
Well, that's one of the things at the MTA we were pushing, because I kind of basically trying to set it up with what I call kind of a 10-step plan to do a build. If you're an ILEC or an ISP, I say you start on about level 3 or 4, because you're already established, you already have a source of potential funds. So pretty much when you talk to me, it's a special project, do the design, help with the build, all that stuff, and then walk away. When we're doing this for these municipalities like this, you're starting at 0. This is broadband, and we spent basically the whole hour just getting to step 3, and I was trying to educate some of the ones that hadn't been in it about how much work there is just to get to the point where you're actually having the fun part. The fun part is doing the design.
Sure.
It's been a change in my thinking in many ways. And I've helped to design, help get funding and stuff, but never on a scale where it's just absolutely starting from scratch and you're working with bond entities and lawyers and accountants trying to, they're dissecting everything you've done to make for a plan, because we all want it to work, but it's, there's a lot of entities involved. So when you're starting without, totally from scratch, that's quite and that's, people get impatient because you just basically added a year onto it minimum. Mm-hmm. It takes a year to get to the point where the bonding companies will do something with you. And again, you got to make sure you're not violating state laws. We're doing all the bidding right and all that kind of stuff long before the fund starts. And that's when people get impatient, because they take a vote and 80% of the people say we want to do our own municipal, and then why is it not built? And, and 3 years later, you're actually turning up customers in some cases, and that's, and I can't blame people for getting impatient about it either.
But it seems like partnering with an established entity like an existing ILEC or whoever reduces the risk for the municipality.
Yeah, correct.
Them kind of jump ahead to some extent, right?
And that's really, to me, what I've tried to push whenever I'm talking to them. And I'm prejudiced by all means, because I've grew up in the tier 3 world of the smaller telephone companies. That's where I've spent the vast majority of my career by a long shot. So I know what they can do. I know what their capabilities are, and I know how clever they are on getting things done out in the rural. You can do all the plans you want, but out in the rural, then real really hits you when you've got one subscriber 3 miles away. How are we going to get to them? So when we're doing this, if I can involve like a general manager or an operations manager of an ILEC tier 3 in the process when we're early on, and if they can decide to be a partner, even when we're talking about it, they'll kind of take over in some ways, because they'll say, well, we can do this and we can do that, and our company's set up this way. And which helps that municipal of saying, oh, okay, here's the person or the company that's going to, at the very least, operate our company. Because we can all go and hire a bunch of people, but if you've got somebody who is already in the business and they can do it profitably, do I need 3 CSRs? No, I've got a bunch of CSRs. I might need to add 1. Do I need 4 more technicians? No, I probably can do it with one or two. When I get the general manager of that tier 3 to really sit down and say, how many people would I need? Here's the positions my business plan, the FARR business plan has out there. But now if I'm coming in as the operator, already being in business, it seems so logical to you, but it's funny to watch people kind of the light bulbs going off going, oh yeah, right. I could do this with like 2 extra people instead of 6 that they have to hire.
Sure.
Well, that's a good deal for both.
Right.
So there we've cut costs and we've got an experienced operator because they can bring more people in as they need them. If they're, especially during the cutover part of it. And
Right.
again, we got people ready to go. We don't have to hire that done. So it helps the business plan. And it's back to, but they have to trust each other. Trust comes up a lot. Can we trust each other? And who has control? That's the next big word. Who has control of it? I've had a couple where the municipal definitely wanted a partner, but they wanted full control of everything.
Interesting.
But they're providing operating, they're putting in half the money. So they're really more than a 50-50 partner, but you want total control and you don't even want to set the rates and stuff. Okay, this is, then I got to sit back and say to that group, we got to get real here. That this is a negotiation. They can walk away and will, and I've had that happen. It's just we can't come to an agreement. But in most cases, it's if I can get them to the table and I can get them talking to each other, it's amazing, how well it works. But that's where the partnerships come in play. They can the ILEC can bring some money in, and the city's put in, so everybody's got skin in the game. They're all motivated to get sign up, and I always tell the tier 3 or the ISP that, look, if you've got the city involved and the city fathers, and they're at the coffee shops pushing this product as well and pushing your solution, I really feel, it's not scientific, it's just Dave's, but I really think that all of a sudden there's another 10% sign up. And when I do, we do business plans, almost all sizes of communities. It seems like a little target numbers I have in my own mind of, you need about 40% take rate to get to cash flow. You can pay your bills, you can pay in a loan. Now you start getting up to 50, 55%. Now we're getting in what I call in the black, where long term we can make this in. And then once you get to 60%, is always what I tell people when I start with these communities. If you don't think you can get 60% take rate, you probably shouldn't do it. Not saying that has to be the number. It's not hard and fast, but you can do that. So again, 10%, if you get an 8 to 10% bump just because you're partnering, could make or break your plan. And especially in those early years, that first 3 years are so critical. And again, once you get it, it's kind of like pushing the ball up the hill, but once you get a little momentum and get it leveled out and level ground, then it will start rolling.
From an ownership perspective, are you seeing things like, say the municipality really wants to own the actual network assets in the ground, and then open it up kind of in an open access model, or maybe they own it and they just lease it out to, one ISP in kind of a long-term relationship, or what sort of partnership?
Well, if they have any ownership to the open access, they're supposed to give access. So, okay.
Right.
Point that out. So, but pretty much a little bit of everything. Obviously the lenders, let's face it, when we're doing it this stage, when the early stages, the banker has a lot of say, they want to own, they understand enough that they want to own the fiber if they can, and the duct, because that's a long-term investment, unlike electronics. So they'll gladly let the ISP come in and own the electronics, and they'll provide a building. The community will provide a building, and they own that. And then it's just a mix and match of what works. But that's, in a nutshell, basically how it's, and then you kind of go from there. How much more? Do you want to own part of the fiber? Do you want to own half the fiber, and be joint owners in that? And then you get into, some of the stuff like some cities have done where they own the duct and, try to get an entity to come in and put the fiber in.
Sure.
And, there's been success, and there's been others that are not so successful because people just haven't wanted to come in and make that commitment. Now, if the city can somehow get the fiber and the duct in, people would like to come in and run the company for them, and they'll bring the electronics and all of that. And that's sometimes an easier play, because again, that other entity is not putting as much money into it. Now, at the end of the day, in that operating agreement, and this is where it always gets really dicey, let's face it, the municipality wants to get their money back. So it's going to be, here's the minimum payments, because that's what our bank loan is.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to have to do to meet our bond obligations. So, that's where that, once you have all these agreements in place, of at least in principle, then that operating agreement is huge. Everybody has to know exactly what they're expecting. That, especially that first 3 years, where most bonding things are set up with 3 years interest only to allow you to get set up. So it's very critical to understand it after that. By that start of that fourth year, now we're going to get principal
You need
payments.
some cash flow.
So get people signed up, get this thing built. And that's what's hurt some that in the past, where I've studied some where they struggled, but in most cases they didn't get it built in a timely manner. I mean, once all this other stuff is done and that plows hit the ground or they start putting a cable in, you got to move. You got to move and get it in. And then I'm always preaching, sign up, whatever you need to do, get people signed up.
Well, and I guess that would be a huge incentive from a municipality perspective of why they'd want to partner with people who are experienced and can get this stuff done, right?
You're getting a marketing department, frankly, from anybody you bring in as an ISP. You don't have to create your own. It's not, you can't hire a marketing department, but again, they're already marketing their services. So, and even if they're hiring out their marketing, it's still another advantage. I mean, they're just and again, don't want to fall in love with any deal, but I just strongly feel that if you can involve that neighbor that's serving the rural, in most cases in Iowa, Minnesota, for example, why not, use every tool they've already got at their disposal and are already experienced with.
Yeah, well, and also just the building of the network too, right? I mean, just with fiber lead times and everything else, right?
Yeah, when I'm involved with that, I mean, they're very involved. I may still be hired, or my firm may still be hired to get it built and all that, but we're definitely talking and right down to the electronics. What electronics are you using? And again, in a municipal, they need to bid stuff. But if that's where I push for the ILEC or the ISP to provide the electronics as a minimum, then we don't have to bid all that. And they have the same electronics as they're using, then we can tie it into their billing system. We can tie it into their mapping system. And, I've even, I could tell them every billing system I know of, if you have your billing on the second week of the month, well, fine, you can do the municipal's billing on the third week or the fourth week. So, in all your electronics, like the switching and all that, you can partition out your services so that you can even traffic flow, and exactly what the city's doing and versus what your own existing customers. So the electronics, they're so powerful. I mean, if they own that, I think that makes their life a lot easier from an operating point of view. And again, that gets back to the lenders like that. Okay, city owns most of the fiber or all the fiber and the duct. No, fine, and go from there. And again, if another provider wants to come in and use the electronics, they got to deal with it's a little more difficult for them because they got to deal with the ILEC or the ISP. But okay, so it's another entity. So,
right.
But that also helps you competitive wise. People they're going to want to build their own, or they may not want to actually use your services. Because I mean, they're talking about the one dig rule basically, and it's got some merit, frankly. But again, you have to plan your own. I don't worry about that too much. If somebody comes in and says they want to get involved and pay for some of the, the duct, for example, while you're in there, well, I guess we'll negotiate that out. We'll see if they want to do that. But then again, you just kind of, it gets a life of its own. And once you get it started, it's just the first step, then a second step, and a third, and away we go.
From it's great to serve the towns, but a big part of the connectivity issue is between the towns, right? So does this offer an opportunity to kind of get to those houses that you can otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, well, from the city father's point of view, they're saying, look, if somebody would come in and build a residential, addition to our town, what better than if we've got a great system in place right now? And then if you're connecting, and again, you look at Iowa in particular and Minnesota, the two of them that I deal with the most, they have all these little communities and they're 10 miles apart, then you just, and I feel like we're seeing that little pieces of chain and we're all getting connected now. And then, well, maybe we should build a little, 10-mile stretch in between us. You build 5 miles, we'll build 5 miles, and then we can have a fiber connection to get us to the world and that type of thing. Or get to a point where we connect with a major provider, because there's a lot of fiber in the ground. So I'm never too worried about connecting, to the quote world unquote. But
Mhm.
but again, then communities can work together. And there's another opportunity. Again, it can get more convoluted and strong, but it can be a powerful thing if two communities go together. I mean,
Sure.
we had one where they, in Iowa, recent years that they tried that. It for a lot of reasons, or just some of it was just, I'll call it Murphy's Law. It just didn't work out. One got ahead of the other one, and one had delays for whatever issue, and so one went ahead and built it. But the original plan was for the two of them to kind of do it in joint, and try to get a contractor and try to save money that way. So that I still believe the idea was good, but just for a myriad of factors, it just just fell apart for one of them, and the other one finally just said, "Okay, we're going to go ahead on our own." And it may still happen. I mean, the other one's still looking, so it's still trying to get it done.
Well, shifting a little bit and kind of to close out the conversation, this week you were at MTA, as we mentioned earlier, and what some of your feedback, because you actually were in person with real operators, and you got some feedback from them, it sounds like.
Yeah, there was some pretty good feedback. Actually, one was in the elevator before they even did the thing.
Always the best.
I had a speaker tag on, had a little speaker ribbon on, and he asked what I was speaking on, and I told him, "Oh, I'll be there." And then we had a conversation as we walked down to where the exhibits and all that stuff were, and they had done one, and this was he was, of course, with an ILEC, and they'd done a joint project with an electric. So it wasn't even a municipal project, but they did an electric, and they were all excited. That was pretty successful. But he said they went to do another one with some of these, do some grant application, and they went to the electric and said, "We want to do this grant. You want to partner with us again?" And the electric said, "No."
Well, it was a different electric. That was a different one, or the same electric?
It was the same electric. And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, that's what we're trying to figure out." He says, he said they went so far as to go, "Did somebody say something to do something?" And he said they're still working on what changed, and maybe the electric decided, it's easier to do it on our own. I don't know. Everybody has resources and reasons. And I never got a chance to really follow up with him. And I told him, because he was kind of laughing, saying, "Maybe I should bring somebody like you in just to get us together and see if we can at least figure out what happened." So
you're kind of like a marriage counselor, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I said, "I'm not sure I could help or make it worse though, too." But so, just strange things happen on this. Well, you know how it is. Anytime you're trying to partner with any project, whether any kind of business, there's a lot of give and take, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. But like you said, he had a very successful project, I thought, and a joint deal, and then all of a sudden didn't want to go any further. But most of them, I guess the big deal again is they're talking to each other now. And I think a lot of the municipals are reaching out saying, "We've got X amount of dollars and we want to allocate it to broadband. How do we do it?" I have a customer right now that is working with a city, and it's going to be one of those deals where after like 5 years, 6 years, they'll work out an ownership arrangement where the ILEC will run it all, but eventually own it all. But in the meantime, the city will put in some of the money to help get it off the ground. And there's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot to get all that done and make sure we stay within, the state laws and all that. But then that's a pretty common thing, and do they want to be further along and say, "Okay, if we're putting in X amount of dollars, we want X amount of ownership." Okay, fine. That's for when revenue is coming in. But for the most part, when you talk to the municipals, it's, we just need better broadband.
Yeah.
Just because the truck's running around with a sign on it saying we get gigabit services doesn't mean that's what we're really getting. And unfortunately, well, in a way, fortunately, because I've worked with the rurals for so long, the rural is built, for the most part, or if it's not, it's close. And now I'm looking at, we really do have, my slide presentation even had a donut in there, make everybody hungry, but it really did. I mean, we are having that effect right now, but that can be solved too. If we could serve the rural and figure out how to do it, we can serve little towns, because our cost per passing is so much lower.
Yeah, and then back to the operational, it's so much better now than it used to be, right? Just because the network's simpler in many ways, right? And it's much more monitorable.
Yeah, and again, that's where an existing commodity or entity comes in, and they've got their billing system, they've got all their management systems, they've even got support agreements in place. So if they can come in and provide that operational support and even the electronics to go with a system that a city puts in, that's a huge win-win, because they frankly, and I'm right up front with us, when I go and do planning sessions with ILECs, one of the things the general manager, when we're doing a 5-year planning, was, okay, Mr. Consultant, how am I going to make money on this? Show me the revenue stream. Well, here's a way to get the revenue stream. You can help operate a company for like a municipal. And again, back to how much personnel you got to do, and you should be able to do it, and you should make a profit and still save them money rather than doing themselves. So a win-win. I'm a big win-win guy. Can be. So there's opportunities out there to do that. And the operations side is a big piece of that. And again, if they can add the next layer of doing the electronics and tie it into all their systems that they already have in place, again, yeah, you might have, there'll be an adder for the software and for the, billing system, all that, but still it's cheaper than the city buying a whole new system themselves. So again, it's a win-win. I don't see any reason why the ILEC shouldn't make some money on it. And as far as when I'm talking with my other hat to the municipal, saying, but you're saving money and you don't have to manage it. You don't have the headache of operating it and hiring people that are experienced. And again, and I flipped to the operating company and said, and they're not trying to poach your employees to run their company next door, because your employees live in that town. And that's happened where we've had employees from the local companies that live in a town that we're building
get poached.
Well, they actually will beat the door down saying, well, we want to at least talk to you.
Yeah.
And so again, why go through that hassle if we can just work something out together? But I think it's gotten so much better. And this is one time where I'll say the government, federal government coming in with some extra dollars has pushed this conversation in a positive way.
Excellent. Well, Dave, it's great catching up with you, almost in person here, virtually in person. But someday we will meet again, and
there we go.
That. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Ken.